Hey guys, I got some information that you probably don't hear on a regular basis. I honestly think many of you will have a hard time accepting this. I took a break from Tartaria to make some cosmology videos because, in order to go any further into Tartaria, I had to break our current world perspective. The only way to understand Tartaria is to understand the occult. Okay, so let's just get started. We all know about the Greeks, right? Yeah, but who were the Greeks? We see their buildings all over the place. Where did they get their knowledge from? We have all heard of the Greek myths of the Titans and the myths of Mount Olympus with the gods. What we don't know is that most of these myths are an allegory for ancient human antiquity. They preserved our history in the form of myth. Before I start this presentation, which I'm sure will blow your mind, we need to give a little summary of some of the other stuff on my channel. I cover Phoenician architecture, giants, magic, and the connection between Tartaria and the Irish. In my first Tartaria Explained video, I go over Plato's Timaeus. Plato's Timaeus is a dialogue between Critias and Socrates. The story starts with Solon visiting Egypt, a city named Sais. There he pursues the priests and is very insistent on his knowledge of esoteric myth. Here's what he says.
On one occasion, wishing to draw them on to speak of antiquity, he began to tell of the most ancient things in our part of the world. About Pharonius, who was called the first man, and Niobe, and after the deluge of the survival of Deucalion and Pyrrha, he traced the genealogy of their descendants, and reckoning up the dates, tried to compute how many years ago the events of which he was speaking happened. Thereupon, one of the priests, who was a very great age, said, "O Solon, Solon, you Hellenes are never anything but children, and there's not an old man among you."
Okay, I read a comment talking about how Nio being the daughter of Tantalus is not a connection. I disagree. What's the context here? They're talking about Pharonius, who is the first man, who is Deucalion, the son of Prometheus, who survived the deluge to regenerate the human race. The survival of Pyrrha, which is the mythical ancestor of the Hellenic race. Also, Niobe is the daughter of Tantalus, who is most famous for his eternal punishment in Tartarus, meaning Tantalus was punished because
he abused divine favor by revealing to mortals the secrets that he had learned in heaven. He offended the gods by killing his son Pelops and serving him to them in order to test their power of observation. He stole nectar and ambrosia, the food of the gods, from heaven and gave them to mortals, according to Pindar's first Olympian ode.
Here's what Solon is basically telling the priest of Egypt. Hey, I know all about my ancient ancestors who were the god race. They came from the east in a city called Argos, which by the way is now a city in Greece, but really this used to be in the Far East. I believe the Greeks are referencing what we call today Tartaria. My whole thing about Tartaria is that we are confused in semantics. Right now everyone wants to claim that, oh, it was this people, or it was my race, or whatever. Look, this isn't about race. I'm showing you right now that the Greeks are talking about Tartaria. Go read Timaeus for yourself. Are you trying to convince me that the Greeks came from blacks or Moors or any other race? No, they did not, and they tell you that. Quote, "In their great missionary pilgrimage, they circled the globe in order to give religion and knowledge of God to the different races of mankind. They also established priesthoods and gave alphabets to the races who were unenlightened in such matters up to that time. Ireland is the country in which the arts and sciences were first discovered and developed. To this country the Greeks applied the term Ogia, a term which was never given but to the very ancient, and it is from the Irish, Aryans, that the Greeks traced their descent. Donnelly's Atlantis." Okay, so please, I need to see more proof before I buy that the Phoenicians are black. I'm not racist, and I'm not Irish, so stop coming to quick assumptions. Okay, now that we've got all that out of the way, the Greeks came from the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians are a cover-up name for the ancient god/race that built all this amazing architecture. I have other videos on my channel that show how the Phoenicians are connected to the ancient Irish and Hyperborea. I'm just gonna get to the point. Basically, we think we have the world figured out, but we don't have a clue. Let me read you another book from Plato called The Symposium, and if this doesn't drive the point home that Plato knew the answer, then I don't know what to say to you. Quote, "In the first place, let me treat of the nature of man and what has happened to it, for the original human nature was not like the present, but different. The sexes were not two as they are now, but originally three in number. There was man, woman, and the union of two. having a name corresponding to this double nature, which had once a real existence but is now lost, and the word androgynous is only preserved as a term of reproach. In the second place, the primeval man was round, his back and sides forming a circle, and he had 4 hands and 4 feet, 1 head with 2 faces looking opposite ways, set on a round neck and precisely alike, also 4 ears, 2 privy members, and the remainder to correspond. He could walk upright as men do, backwards or forwards as he pleased, and he could also roll over and over at a great pace, turning on his 4 hands and 4 feet, 8 in all, like tumblers going over and over with their legs in the air. This was when he wanted to run fast. Now the sexes were 3, and such as I have described them, because the sun, moon, and earth are 3, and the man was originally the child of the sun, the woman of the earth, and the man-woman of the moon, which is made up of the sun and the earth. And they were all round and moved round and round, like their parents. Terrible was their might and strength, and the thoughts of their hearts were great, and they made an attack upon the gods. Doubt reigned in the celestial councils. Should they kill them and annihilate the race with thunderbolts, as they had done the giants, then there would be an end of the sacrifices and worship which men offered to them. But on the other hand, the gods could not suffer their insolence to be unrestrained.
At last, after a good detail of reflection, Zeus discovered a way. He said, "Methinks I have a plan which will humble their pride and improve their manners. Men shall continue to exist, but I will cut them in 2, and they will be diminished in strength and increased in numbers. This will have the advantage of making them more profitable to us. They shall walk upright on 2 legs, and they shall continue insolent and will not be quiet. I will split them again, and they shall hop about on 1 single leg." He spoke and cut men in 2, like a sorb apple which is halved for pickling, or as you might divide an egg with a hair. And as he cut them, one after another, he bade Apollo give the face and the half of the neck a turn in order that man might contemplate the section of himself. He would thus learn a lesson of humility. Apollo was also bidden to heal their wounds and compose their forms. So he gave a turn to the face and pulled the skin from the sides all over which in our language is called the belly, like purses which draw in. And he made 1 mouth at the center, which he fastened in a knot, the same which is called the navel. He also molded the breast and took out most of the wrinkles, much as a shoemaker might smooth leather upon a last. He left a few, however, in the region of the belly and navel, as a memorial of the primeval state. After the division, the 2 parts of man, each desiring his other half, came together, and throwing their arms about one another, entwined in a mutual embraces, longing to grow into one. They were on the point of dying from hunger and self-neglect, because they did not like to do anything apart. And when one of the halves died, and the other survived, the survivor sought another mate. Man or woman, as we call them, being the sections of entire men or women, and clung to that. They were being destroyed. Then Zeus, in pity of them, invented a new plan. He turned the parts of generation round to the front, for this had not always been their position. And they sowed the seed no longer as hitherto like grasshoppers in the ground, but in one another. And after the transposition, the male generated in the female in order that by the mutual embraces of man and woman they might breed, and the race might continue. Or if man came to man, they might be satisfied and rest and go their ways to the business of life. So ancient is the desire of one another which is implanted in us, reuniting our original nature, making one of 2, and healing the state of man. Each of us, when separated, having one side only like a flat fish, is but the indenture of a man, and he is always looking for his other half. Men, who are a section of that double nature which was once called androgynous, are lovers of women. Adulterers are generally of this breed, and also adulterous women who lust after men. The women, who are a section of the woman, do not care for men, but have female attachments. Female companions are of this sort. But they who are a section of the male follow the male, and while they are young, being slices of the original man, they hang about men and embrace them, and they are themselves the best of boys and youths, because they have the most manly nature. Some indeed assert that they are shameless, but this is not true, for they do not act thus from any want of shame, but because they are valiant and manly, and have manly countenance, and they embrace that which is like them. And these, when they grow up, become our statesmen, and these only, which is a great proof of the truth of what I am saying.
Let me break that down, guys. We were androgynous beings. That's right. Tantalus was some ruler in the ancient East, Tartaria, Tartarus, and it was destroyed by the gods, or Zeus, by lightning. This is really important. Reason being, if you read Timaeus, you will see distinctly two disasters, one of water, the deluge, and one of fire, which is the myth of Pharaonius. The priest of Egypt basically said, Solon, you don't have a clue. There have been many ages of catastrophe, and there will be many more. At the end of it all, Solon is baffled. Plato is also separating the giants as a completely different race, so take note of that. My take is, what if this explains the whole missing bathrooms in temples? What if this also explains how they lived for so long? Maybe these beings didn't have to use the restroom, if you know what I'm saying. I know that sounds crazy, but watch Conspiracy RS video on waste management. Let's see what Helena Blavatsky has to say. I love a lot of her information, but you also have to understand that she takes a lot of academia into account in her theories. So I don't know if I buy the whole presentation, but I definitely think that there is some amazing information in the book, The Secret Doctrine. Quote,
By 20 to 25 million years ago, the early humans had entered their third cycle, or root race. At first, still relatively ethereal, they were physiologically neither male nor female and still reproduced by exuding vital cells. Gradually, as their protoplasm thickened and it condensed, it specialized into skeletal, nervous, muscular, and other systems and organs, so that the first recognizably human beings resulted, though still looking very different from humans today. As the reproductive organs became localized, humans became androgynous and reproduced by means of eggs, first matured outside the body and later within it, as is currently the case. The possession of traces in each sex of the reproductive organs of the other is a remnant of this hermaphrodism. As humanity physicalized and its inner and outer vehicles developed in the third root race, the human consciousness centers began to express their truly human aspects. Every human being is composed of several distinct karmatically interlinked consciousness centers at different evolutionary levels, which correspond roughly to the kingdoms of nature. When the human intellectual center, or self, was able to express itself through its animal human soul and physical body, mental forces entered self-consciously into human awareness. This point was the defining moment in human evolution, immortalized in myths around the world as the coming of mind. Many traditions describe this event as the incarnations of gods among humanity because it represents the emergence of our truly human selves under the influence of both our own inner divinity and of highly evolved beings who ignited and taught the consciousness of early mankind.
if you've watched my other videos, I talk about a dream reality. This is what I think Tartaria was like. She says 20 million years ago, yet we have engravings of them dancing like Plato described in Phoenician cities. What if I told you that it wasn't a million years ago? I think Aristotle is where we can draw the line on where this change happened to the minds of the ancients. If we wake up to the idea that there is missing time and history has been manipulated, could it be possible that this event was 1,000 years ago? Would that change your perspective of reality? Would that change how you act today? These Phoenician symbols and the Statue of Liberty are representative of this androgynous race. I hope this was a thought-provoking video, and if you liked it, then stay tuned. In Tartaria Explained Part 3, I will go over more on how Tartaria was destroyed and the nature of our cosmology. Thank you so much for watching, and may our minds be unveiled.